theory that he was actually crucified on Thursday. So, but I can't remember how people who hold that theory, I can't remember how they explain the fact that he had to get off the cross because of because of the Sabbath. I don't understand that part. I don't remember that. So,
Well, didn't sometimes it take them
We're
a
up.
day, couldn't it take them a couple of days to die?
It could, but not him, because it tells. I mean, it specifically says on the 6th hour. I mean, he was only up there 6 hours. But people sometimes, yes, they could be on the cross for a matter of days, but because of the brutality of his and the torture of what he endured beforehand and the loss of blood, there was just no way.
They pierced his son. I don't think they did that they commonly broke legs, I think, but.
Yeah, they didn't have to do that to him. So, anyway. All right. Welcome. We're just talking. Those of you who are joining us online, thanks for hanging out with us. We got a little crowd in here. Got some things to share with you tonight. First one, those going to be birthdays. We didn't talk about this. Birthdays in the church.
Uh-oh.
Birthdays in the church.
What
Come
month
on.
are we in? Are we still in April?
We're still in March.
It is.
Are we still in April?
Are we still in April? Depends on what year you're talking about.
I'm still in 2020.
Yeah.
Let's see. No birthdays today.
No birthdays today. Can somebody get that door? Because the Arowana crowd, they are juiced in there. They are excited.
They're having a treasure hunt tonight.
Oh, okay. Is that why they're dressed up
Yes.
like pirates?
Yes,
That is
yes,
awesome.
they're having a treasure hunt.
So if any of you know anybody who has kids or grandkids to be a part of Awana, great ministry to be a part of. So we don't have birthdays in the church that we're aware of to celebrate. So we're just going to celebrate some famous people's birthdays. First of all, does anybody know who John Tyler is?
He's a musician, right?
That's John Taylor. No, that's James Taylor.
Are you sure?
John Tyler.
Taylor's North Carolina.
Nobody knows. That's funny because he is the 10th president of the United States of America. Anyway,
That's so
we have
sad.
we have some real history buffs in the place. But anyway, he was born on this date in 1790, born in Virginia, and died in 1862. Also audience participation, the best pitcher in each league gets what award at the end of the year? Cy Young Award. His birthday was today, 1867. Cy Young was born. He's got the most wins in Major League Baseball history. Let me just tell you, whenever a pitcher reaches the milestone of winning 300 games, it really is a big deal. It really is celebrated, and it's almost a sure bet to go into the Hall of Fame. Cy Young won 511 games, so he was something else. But he was born in Gilmore, Ohio, died in 1955. 1918, you've probably heard the name Sam Walton somewhere along the way. Walmart and Sam's. He was born in Oklahoma on this date, died in 1992. And then in the area of baseball again, 1962, you may or may not have heard of Billy Beane. If you remember the movie a few years back, that Brad Pitt was in it, Jonah Hill, I think, was in it, Moneyball. It was all about the general manager of the Oakland Athletics, brought in a whole new way of looking at bringing in a baseball team and constructing a baseball team. And it was based on the life of Billy Beane, or the profession of Billy Beane. And he was born on this date in Orlando, Florida. A few things. We'll skip over deaths. We don't need any of those anyway. None that were really that impressive, I didn't think. But a few things that I thought were interesting on this date. In 1795, Beethoven debuted he had his debut performance as a pianist in Vienna. So on this date, he was only 24 years old. But also on this date, in 1827, he was buried in Vienna. Same date. So I thought that was interesting. 1848, now I like cold weather, but I'm not so sure about this. Niagara Falls stopped flowing on this date in 1848 because there was an ice jam upstream. That would have to be awfully cold. You ever been there and seen how strong that current is to go over the thing? Man, for that to have frozen that strongly to stop it, that's crazy. 1929, speaking of presidents, Herbert Hoover had the first telephone installed in the Oval Office on this date. And while we're at it, I didn't mention this, but it also happened to be his wife's birthday on the same date. So 1929, first phone in the Oval Office. 1973, the United States troops left Vietnam. So basically the Vietnam War ended on this date, although I guess they still call it a conflict. Is it a war? Is it a conflict? Whatever. Y'all can get into the semantics of that, but you know what I'm saying. The next year, this is interesting to me because I love outer space. I was so disappointed. Was it Thursday night when the 5 planets aligned that you were supposed to be able to see with the naked eye? And it was overcast. You couldn't see it. I was disappointed in that. But anyway, on this date in 1974, they did the first flyby of Mercury. And they returned photos from Mariner 10. So that was interesting. 1978, for those of you who were into it back then, the Carol Burnett Show. The last airing of the Carol Burnett Show was on this date on CBS. That show won 25 Emmys. Pretty big deal.
Wow.
1997, the Braves played their first game at Turner Field. What a short-lived stadium that was, you know, in terms of even in terms of professional baseball, short-lived field. But I wish that Stan was in here. Somebody needs to get the message to him that on this date, first game in Turner Field, the Braves beat the Yankees, as it should be. Beat them 2-0. Unfortunately, it was just an exhibition game, but whatever. And then the last thing, 1999. I remember this happening. I remember the talk about this. The Dow Jones Industrial, you know, the stock market or whatever, closed over 10,000 for the first time ever on this date, 1999. So now, if it gets below 10,000, people think we're in a recession, and they might be right. But anyway, all right. So before we get into our study tonight, we are going to get into our study, but I want to listen. Anytime that we can here at Emmanuel Baptist Church, anytime that we can highlight missions, and I'm talking about, and I don't just mean what we oftentimes call missions. I'm talking about real missions, getting on the ground floor, getting in the trenches, sharing Jesus, meeting needs, and those kind of things. I want us to do that. And so we have a couple of ladies that I had mentioned. I think we mentioned it last week, just in our prayer time. Got a couple of ladies that are going over to Israel, and it's not just a tour, although we're doing that again in 2 years. I've already had a question about it. Somebody who's already planning on going. I'm all for that. But we're not just talking about a tour. We're talking about reaching the Jewish people with the gospel and others there with the gospel. And so Abby and her sister Rebecca, they both went with us on our tour to Israel, and just kind of got a little flame inside of them. And when I found out that there was an opportunity to do missions over there, I sent the link out to several folks, but especially to them, and they responded. They're planning to go, but we just live in a day and age. There's just no way around it. I'm not even going to apologize for it. It just is what it is. Missions and ministry costs money. It just does. And so they got to raise money to go. It's not going to be paid for them. And I want Emmanuel Baptist Church to support them. They're a part of our church anyway, and I want us to be able to support them any way we can to make it possible for them to go. And so we're going to get a little bit more detailed information about this as time goes on, and maybe even in this forum, much more detailed. But I've asked Abby, we were just talking about it here, talking about being able to raise money. I just wanted her to come and introduce this mission opportunity to us here tonight. Just take, 5. If she takes more, then that's fine. But, give us 5 minutes of her time and let us know what's up about that. And so, Abby, come on up and talk to us. This is your mic, so you don't have to mess with any of that.
Sweet. Oh, I can see myself. I don't like that. Okay, so, hello. My name is Abigail. My sister is Rebecca, and we are the 2 redheads. So we're easily identifiable. You see us in a crowd. So we heard about this opportunity from Lane. It's a group called Chosen People's Ministries, and they have a specific group going. It's Outreach Israel. It's for 18 to 30-year-olds. And my sister and I were like, should we apply? I don't know. It sounds kind of interesting. So we both decided to apply. We weren't sure if we were both going to get in. We learned that it was a very small group of people going, like 10 to 12 people in that age group. And then we found out about 2 weeks ago that we were accepted, and we have the opportunity to get to go to Israel like twice within the same year, 2 different calendar years, but year time span, which is crazy. So we're super excited. Some of the stuff that we're going to be doing is living directly in Jerusalem in like this apartment style area in the neighborhood. I know when we went before, we didn't spend a lot of time in Jerusalem. We kind of, we stayed at a big hotel, and we did a lot of touristy kind of things. This is more in the community, so I'm very excited about that. Being able to walk to the grocery store and meet all kinds of people. So we will be hosting a bunch of events through the group. So we're hosting a lot of Shabbat dinners. So for those of you who don't know, Shabbat is kind of the Sunday equivalent. It is a big deal over there. Things shut down. A lot of businesses. I know when we were over there in December, there was like one restaurant in the middle of the day that was open on Shabbat, and that was like where everybody went. So there was this long line. We were waiting. But Shabbat is very highly celebrated. So we'll be able to, meet community members and be there directly ministering to those people. We are also having a banquet for Holocaust survivors and their families. That's something they try to do annually. So it's a big deal. A lot of people come. And so to be able to be there with translators and have conversations with these people with these crazy family stories, like super exciting. There's a children's ministry that I know we're going to be part of, doing like arts and crafts. And then there's like nursing homes that we get to visit as well. And I heard that like sometimes they like to sing, and if there's musical talent, in the groups, then we might be able to lead something like that. And my sister and I were like, we like music. Is there a way to ship a guitar over there? Don't know yet. So we're still trying to figure out logistics, but she plays guitar and I play piano, for those of you who don't know. So yeah, and it's an opportunity to get to know the culture a little bit more and to learn more Hebrew. I don't know very much, but I'm excited about that. So what we need from you guys is 2 forms of support. One being the most important is we need prayer. Absolutely need prayer. And that's something that, if you want to write that down now, like it's going to be a continuing need as we are starting this journey, but then also the trip itself is May 28th through July 3rd, so especially during that time period, we'll need prayer. The second is, like Lane said, financially. So we have a couple of needs. The big number, since 2 of us are going, it will be $9,400, so $9,400 that we're trying to raise, and we need that by May 7th. So very soon time frame that we're trying to pull all of this together, and it's a little bit more difficult again since it is both of us going at the same time, but I think if it's supposed to happen, God's going to make it happen, and again, thrilled, very excited about it. So so we're going to have a couple of events and different things, but before getting into that, I think if you want to give, pray about it, kind of see what is a way that you can get in contact with us. I guess you could contact the church office.
Sure.
And they can pass that information on to us. If you see me on Sunday, I'll be there continually. Come flag me down, that kind of thing. But yeah, so those are the 2 main ways that we need support right now, is prayer and then also financially. So if y'all have any other questions too, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. And I listen, just to make sure that back up here. There we go. There are, when we're talking about this, and we're talking about given the opportunity here, want to make sure y'all understand 2 things. It's not just because they're going to do this that I would have her come and share. There are 2 things. First of all, I believe in Abby and Rebecca. I got to know them on the Israel trip. They're great ladies. They love Jesus. They live Jesus, and they want people to know about Jesus. And so I believe in them, and then I also believe in the reason that I passed on the information to them is because I believe in Chosen People Ministries. For those of you who were here for the Seder dinner last year, that was through Chosen People Ministries. The guy, that's who I worked with. That's who sent the speaker and all that. And so I've been familiar with them for years. They're a quality ministry. They don't they don't just like ask for money and then hoard it all. They actually do use that for ministry and for missions, and they have a great heart for the Jewish people. So anyway, I'm confident to be able to support this, and so I encourage you to pray about what you have to do. I was sitting here thinking about it as she was saying, talking about the prayer and the money. The prayer, that doesn't cost us anything. Prayer is going to be what makes it effective, but she's not going to be able to call the airline and say, hey, we need tickets, and we've prayed about it, and then say, okay, well, here you go. It just doesn't work like that. And so you got to have both. And so anyway, just pray about how you'd like to support that. All right? Good. Now, we might in a couple of weeks, in fact, while I'm thinking about it, let me go ahead and say this. Remember, we do not have this Bible study next Wednesday. We won't have it in person, nor will we have it online, because our services will be moved to Thursday for our Maundy Thursday service. And so, in fact, there's not going to be Awana either. Might be choir, but that's just going to be their own ministry's thing. But as far as church-wide stuff, we won't be having this. So in a couple of weeks, we might get a fuller report on what's going on, and give you the opportunity to ask questions, any questions that you might have, any of that kind of stuff, as well as her offering, since you might see her here on Sundays. So anyway, all right, everybody good? Okay. Take out your book. Turn, if you will, to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy. And that might be a little bit difficult for you to find. Well, it's just before 2 Timothy. So, glad I could help out with that. You may want to turn there in your Bible too. I don't know that we'll be referencing it tonight, per se, but you can have it open there if you'd like. 1 Timothy. And let us do our introduction. It will probably be a 2-week deal. May have been 2 weeks anyway, but I think we're looking at 2 weeks to cover 1 Timothy, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right? So, let's begin by talking about the pastoral epistles. Pastoral, the letters basically to pastors about pastoring from a pastor, in essence. So, there are 3 pastoral epistles. This would be a good little quiz question, wouldn't it? There are 3 pastoral epistles. 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus comprise what has come to be known as the pastoral epistles. It was first named pastoral. This is just a little trivia here because I know that y'all all care about this. It was first called the pastoral epistles in 1726. So it's nothing that we got from St. Augustine or, the Apostle John, none of that. 1726 by Paul Anton of Halle. That's where we got it from, but he named it that because Paul wrote them to 2 pastors that he left in charge of churches that he had invested heavily in. There's a church in my hometown that, it's not the only one, it's just the most recent one that I can think of, where the pastor resigned within the last year or so, and basically he put his son in charge. He put his son, kind of moved him into the pastorate. And of course the church supported that, but him being the leader of that church, he kind of named his successor, if you will. I don't really know how else to say it. And I don't know that I've heard that often where a father did that with a son. Is that what happened with Joel Osteen? Or did his dad die and they put Joel Osteen? I'm not really sure. I know that his dad was the pastor there, whatever. So it happens. And sometimes the pastor has a lot of say, if not the say, in who comes behind him. That's what happened. That was really a biblical way to do it, honestly. And they didn't get, here we get committees, right? In fact, a couple of y'all were on the committee that brought me here. And But that's not how they did it in the New Testament. Oftentimes, Paul would go in, he would start a church, he would invest in the church, he would build the church up, and then he would say, okay, there's the pastor, come in and take over. And so that's where these pastoral epistles had come from. He put a lot into the churches, and then he installed a pastor as he left to go start other churches. His job was never, his intention was never to stay at a church long term. Ephesus, being there 3 years, was unusual for Paul. That was just not his MO. Timothy led the church at Ephesus, while Titus pastored on the island of Crete. So all 3 letters were probably written between the events of Acts 28, and you might be saying, well, what's that? Well, that's him talking about his first Roman imprisonment, sometime between that and his execution in the mid to late 60s, which was basically his second Roman imprisonment. The letters share some common themes, such as God as Savior, having sound doctrine, sound faith, and sound teaching, and just talking about godliness in general. So, that's the pastoral epistles. They kind of make up, so if you're ever wondering why are they in the order they're in, I kind of like it because you got, when you're trying to work through or name the New Testament books, once you get to Thessalonians, man, it's smooth sailing from there because you got 2 T's, the 2 Thessalonians, 2 T's, the first and 2 Timothy, and you got Titus. So you got several T's right there in the row. Now, who wrote the thing? Well, we've already talked about that. We've already talked about Paul. While we assume that Paul wrote 1 Timothy, many contemporary scholars feel that Paul is actually a pseudonym. In other words, it was somebody other than Paul who used Paul's name. And there are a few reasons that they hold to this. They believe that the letter might contain fragments of Paul's writings, thoughts, or teachings. In other words, there were parts that were his, but really somebody else came in, they organized it, and they filled in the gaps, and they're the ones who actually wrote the letter. They just did so in Paul's name. And it's not without evaluating, it's not without thinking through. It's when you look at some of the evidence, you got to at least ask yourself, is that possible? And their doubts are fueled by a few things. Number one, by the book's style and vocabulary. We talked about that with other books of Paul's leading up to this time. But check this out. This is not in your outline, but maybe it should be. Little neat factoid. 1/3 of the letters that are in this book, 1/3 of the words that are in Greek are not found in any other of Paul's writings. So that's pretty significant. That's not a small number. The nature of the false teaching that the book refutes. In other words, is this full-blown Gnosticism that Paul is fighting against when he's writing to Timothy saying, hey, listen, fight against Gnosticism because it's it's tearing up the church, it's false doctrine, and those kinds of things. Gnosticism wasn't full-blown until the 2nd century. So if he's addressing full-blown Gnosticism here, it's much later than Paul. Paul would have been long dead from by this time. The church structure outlined within the book, because he talks about overseers and he talks about deacons in here, and their argument is that's too advanced for the 1st century church. The church was still trying to figure out what it was and how it was going to operate and those kind of things. They also say that there's an historical or a chronological incompatibility with Acts. In other words, the timelines don't really match up. And then other people say, well, the theology of the book, there's not really enough theological content like Paul usually had. So these are just a few things they look at and they're like, it doesn't seem like it's Paul. It's just not like him as an author. You look at John Grisham books. There's a lot of similarities in those things. You can even look at it genres of music. I really used to like Stephen Curtis Chapman. He was the guy in the mid-'80s. He's the guy who did all the music. After a while, all of his music sounded the same. They all sound the same. And so you got somebody, he writes all these letters that are the same, and then you got one that's not really the same. You're like, is this really the same guy? That's kind of what it sounded like for them. But really, when you think about it, most of these things are easily answered. The arguments are unconvincing. So not only does Paul claim to be the author here, the early church, those who received it first and soon thereafter, and the most respected leaders in the early church, they strongly attributed it to the hand of Paul. So, if they were that close to it, and they were convinced it was Paul, I'm convinced it's Paul. So we're going to go with Paul as the author. Now, when did he write this thing? An exact chronology of the events of Paul's last few years is impossible to construct. I mean, there is actually arguments over, I don't mean like I'm mad at you or, I'm going to throw rocks at you or whatever, but there's just debate. We'll throw out the word debate. There's a lot of debate on even how many missionary journeys Paul went on. Was it 2? Was it 3? Or was it 4? And people will argue all day long about which one of those they think it is. So it's really it's hard to construct exactly how Paul's last few years, how it fleshed out. We can, however, draw some general timelines. Paul's first Roman imprisonment was around 61 to 63, and that's when he wrote the prison epistles. Now, thinking back through this, I didn't really look back through it, but thinking back through it, I think that I failed to even talk about the prison epistles. And basically, just like the pastoral epistles is a group of them that were written similarly, the prison epistles were written similarly. What did they have in common? There you go. Not a trick question, all right? He wrote them while he was in prison, okay? And those prison epistles are Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. So, his first Roman imprisonment was around the time that he wrote those. He was then released from prison and set out on what we're going to say, what I would advocate, is his 4th missionary journey. He had 4 of them. There are people who are much smarter than I who would say it was only 3, and there are a few people who would say it was only 2. But I would say there's 4. And it was during this time, probably from Philippi, which the third verse of 1 Timothy, he talks about Macedonia. That's the region. Philippi would have been the city within that region where he wrote it from, and it's probably from there that he wrote 1 Timothy. So, somewhere in the 63, 66 area. All right? Who did he write to? Paul was writing to a young minister named Timothy. Timothy was Paul's son in the faith. What does that mean?
Not biological, but he knew because they both believed in Christ.
Okay. Not biological, not his biological son. Understudy. Okay.
Mentee.
What now?
Mentee.
Mentee. Okay. Anybody else? Probably even more intimate than that. Paul's probably the one who led him to Jesus. That's probably what that means. And then, kind of what y'all are getting at, he was also his son in the pastorate, which is where he took him under his wing, showed him how to be a pastor, told him how to be a pastor, and really, that's what 1 and 2 Timothy are. It's telling Timothy, this is how you pastor. So, I went, I went for 4 years, and I ain't great. Actually, you count my doctorate, and I crammed a 3-year study into about 6 or 7 years. So, I went 10 or 11 years, and I ain't no good at it. Somebody should have just said, well, just read 1 and 2 Timothy. That'll tell you how to do it. So he's investing in Timothy, his son, telling him how to be a pastor. And we'll talk more about Timothy when we do our introduction to 2 Timothy, just because they are closely linked, and we got to save something for the next study, right? So we're going to talk about Timothy more in the next study. Now, what is the structure? What's the structure of this book? The outline, warning against false teachers. So much of the New Testament is talking about false teachers, false doctrine, those kind of things. In fact, we were I hear so we had we we put these things on Facebook, right? these reels, and I appreciate Candace because she knows how to do that stuff, and I ain't got a clue. You ever been on Facebook and you see these like 30-second, clips of something, and it might be somebody fishing, or it might be a boxing match, or something funny, a prank that somebody plays on somebody else. You see those little things, those short things? Well, Candace does those for some of my sermons. She just puts clips of sermons on Facebook, and it goes out to, I don't know who it goes to. Do you know how it goes to? How does it? I don't know how it decides who it goes to, but it goes out to people who are not a part of church, and different people can see it. And so they click on it, and they get about all of me that they can stand, which is, 30 seconds of my sermon. And so when you do that, you're sending out to the general public, you don't ever know what you're going to get, because I know this might shock you, but not everybody believes what we believe. And I might be up there giving the most solid doctrinal content that the Bible has to offer, and somebody's going to be, that's dumb. In fact, we've had two that are just like so classic. One of them was it just said kook, right? Just so like right beneath it, he called me a kook because of whatever it was I was saying. Whatever, it's fine. I'm okay with this, really, or else I wouldn't be telling you. I'd be like all hurt and stuff. But another one said blah blah blah, shut up. So I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to shut up.
Was this a church member? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was one of our deacons. But anyway, so there was one who actually gave a thoughtful response, and it was long. Now his second response was way out there, but his first response was a thoughtful response, and it was one that I was not ignorant of, because I've had people who make this argument before. Now it didn't have anything to do really with what the reel was. This is what you call as a reel, like fishing reel. It had nothing to do with that, but he was making the point that you had to be baptized to be saved, and that in essence, we really only need the Holy Spirit to know truth. And as theoretically possible as that could be, practically it is totally wrong. And so I don't get in arguments on Facebook. That's just totally ridiculous. It's totally dumb. And so that's how I started out. I did respond to him, and I said, I'm not going to debate this, but I said, you need to understand context when you're looking at a verse, and you need to understand that everything that you have said in this post has either been the outcome of a heresy, or it has led to heresy. And you need to, and I just kind of left it at that. I tried to be nice. I don't know. Y'all can go through and look. Y'all can find it. Can't they find it? If somebody's looking for it, you can find it. And you can see my response, and you can say, Lane, you're an idiot, or Lane, that was good, whatever you want to. But today it was interesting, and I do have a point for all this. So the points that he was making were biblically incorrect, and they were heresy. And in our staff meeting today, it was funny because I said something about when I responded and kind of passed on through, and Andrew was kind of surprised. He's like, you responded? Kind of like, you should know better than that. And I was like, and my only answer was yes, because he was speaking heresy, and I could not say something. And that's really what much of our New Testament is. It is Paul or Peter or John or James or someone hearing what a church is believing and teaching, and the cancer that is moving into that church and that church's doctrine, and an apostle stepping up and saying, that is not right. Here's what the truth is. And so, of course, this is a much more constructive way to do it than trying to get in an argument on Facebook. That's ridiculous. But, and so when it is totally normal and legit, when we look at an outline and we see that chapter 1 is beginning a warning against false teachers, that's because they were everywhere. And by the way, we live in a day that is much the same because of the internet. Anybody can say anything, and they are spouting the most ignorant thing, and the problem is that people believe the ignorance. And so we have I will be making the case much more strongly in 2 weeks when we get to the theology of 1 Timothy. But not only is it okay to argue truth and to defend truth and to fight for truth, even, listen, even at the expense of peace within a church. I'm going to say this again in 2 weeks, but if you have to choose between the defense of truth and peace within truth, you better pick truth and fighting for truth every single time. Peace for the sake of peace is not worth an acceptance or a tolerance of heresy within the church. It's just not. So, anyway, I've ruined 2 weeks from now. I can't surprise you with that. I'm just afraid that somebody's not going to be here or watching in 2 weeks, and so I had to say it this way. So anyway, warning against false teachers. Number 2, instructions on administration of the church, and basically that is church polity. I don't want to say hierarchy, that's not, but how a church is organized. There you go, how a church is organized. Organization within the church. And this is where he talks about overseers and deacons and the qualifications for those offices. Number 3, identifying false teachers and true teachers. Here's how you know they're wrong. This is how you know they're true. And so, listen, let me tell you something. I submit myself to this when I tell you that you should, if this is what he's talking about in chapter 4, and really he's talking about the qualifications in chapters 2 and 3, y'all should be vitally interested in what Paul is saying here, and you need to be looking at me and saying, is that what he's like? So, number 4, dealing with different groups in the church, and then miscellaneous matters. Again, just it's almost hodgepodge kind of stuff, but it's very important within the church. Okay? All right. Now, because I don't want to get started with something that I can't finish, and we got to have enough to save for next time, I am going to stop right there for tonight, and we will come back and finish that in 2 weeks. Remember, for those of you who just joined us, I mentioned before that we will not be meeting in 2 weeks. We have our Maundy Thursday service next Thursday, which I hope you will join us for. It will be, I'm just telling you, I don't know how else to say it. It is most meaningful if you can be here, but we will be live streaming that as well, and you can take communion there, at your home or wherever hospital bed, wherever you might be if you're out of town, next Thursday as well. But anyway, because of Maundy Thursday, we will not be meeting for Bible study next Wednesday. So we won't have Awana either. So anyway, that's what we got going. What prayer requests do we have? If you will go ahead and begin there. For those of you who are watching online, we got a pretty good number of eyes. If you want to begin to put in the comment section any prayer requests you might have, we'd appreciate that. And while y'all are getting ready for yours here, I will once again encourage you. We've got these cards. We actually have given out more than I had realized. It was a pleasant surprise, but we still have a lot left to give out. So I'm just telling you, you can't give out too many of these. So take as many as you will give out. We have them here at church, and you can come pick them up during the week if you want to, or you can pick them up Sunday when you're here. We got a week and a half left, and again, this is our advertising. Simply Easter at Emmanuel on one side, more than this on the back side with a QR code that people can pull up on their phones, and they can kind of get a picture of it. And a lot of people have kind of joked around. They're like, well, not everybody has a phone or whatever, and that's fine. Use yours while you're there with them. Pull it up and say, hey, look, here's what we got going on for Easter. Let me invite you to come and be a part of that. Take them, invite your neighbors. That's going to be my primary thing. I haven't done it yet. I guess I do need to because of the musical that's coming up, or the music that we're presenting Sunday. That'll be meaningful, but I'm going to pass these out in my neighborhood. So hope you will as well. All right, what prayer requests? Candace, what ones do we have in advance?
We have the Francis Patton family.
Okay, Francis Patton has passed away, in case you had not heard that. And can you, the details are, the arrangements are this coming Saturday. At Bonaventure Cemetery, Funeral Home. The visitation will be from 10 to 11, just kind of drop in as they usually are. Then the service will be at 11, followed by the interment just up the street there at Forest Lawn. So, yeah.
And then we have Marthita Lewis's family. Marthita passed away this morning.
Yes, Marthita Cleon's wife has passed away. We don't have details. Wait, we do have details. Yes,
details.
that's right.
So the visitation is Sunday. I'm not as good as you. I don't remember the time.
Probably in the
I
evening.
think it's
when you
3 to 5,
Oh, okay.
maybe.
All right, that's a good time.
Maybe.
Okay.
And then Fox and Weeks. And then the service is Monday at 11.
So that information,
Fox and
we will
Weeks.
has that already been sent in an email?
It has not been sent
Okay.
yet. I was waiting for her obituary to come up.
Okay, that's right. So that information, in case you don't remember that, you don't have to write that down. We will be sending out an email. If you're not on our email list, then send us your email. We'll be glad to put you on our email list.
And then my uncle is not going to make it much longer, like a day maybe. So my family needs prayer.
All right. And he's in Waycross.
He's in Waycross.
All right. What else?
Well, the praise, 2 people rang the bell at the Cancer Center Monday.
Yay.
All right.
And, of course, that was followed by Code Blue.
Hmm.
So, and I gave out our cards today
Uh-huh.
to the people in the waiting room, and they all accepted them. They were thrilled to get them.
Good. All right. That is good. I gave mine out of the funeral home. Last time I was at the funeral home, which was just last week.
That means I need more cards, because the stack I actually took to do a street, and now I don't have any left.
We've got them. Do we have any? We
We don't have any over
office.
here. They're
So-
all in the sanctuary.
Yeah. So before you leave, we can get you over there. We'll be-
We go to choir.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They'll be on the table when you walk through. All right. Any typed in?
No.
Tim Smith could still use some prayer. He's on that liquid diet until his surgery, which is April 12th, so it's still 3 weeks off.
Hmm.
And he's just struggling with getting the right nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
energy, he fell. So just prayers that they figure out how to give him enough nutrition.
Well, speaking of that, can we trying to figure out foods? Can we talk about Mark?
You can talk about Mark.
Okay. Mark has been diagnosed with diabetes, and so this is something brand new to him. He's just trying to have a little procedure done on his skin, and all of a sudden here we got diabetes. How do you get there? But anyway, he's trying to figure out what foods work together, and trying to get the doctors to get him an appointment. It's just kind of crazy. So anyway, be in prayer for him as he gets into a new normal. Actually Sandy too, because Sandy's going to have a new normal. She's not going to be eating cake every day while poor Mark is over here can't have any. So anyway.
You just have one bite.
Yeah.
I get to work though.
Yeah, you can have your Snickers bar at work, right? Yeah. So anyway.
Well, take the mini Snicker bars and not the big ones. They only have, about 5 grams sugar.
But who could stop at just one?
Well, that's
Anyway.
it. You have to be disciplined. You do have to discipline yourself.
He's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
People say, how can you be so disciplined? And say, well, you want to live.
That's pretty much it. Pretty much it. All right. Gene mentioned Alicia. Let's pray for Alicia and pray for Bruce back here. Anything else? Anybody else? All right, and pray for our Easter services that are coming up. Got the music this Sunday, and then we got the Maundy Thursday next Thursday, and then Easter Sunday the following. So it's the High Holy Week. Okay, well, let's go to God and pray then. God, as always, there are so many needs. It's hard to kind of keep them straight in our minds, and then it almost boggles the mind when you think it's such a small sample size that we have in here compared to the number of people that we have in our church, and even grows more minuscule when we think about the number of people that our church represents and all the needs that are out there. And so, God, we can't keep all that straight, and yet the wonder of you and in your mind and your all-knowing mind is that you do know. You know all things. You know all situations. You know every need. And even if we are intimately and closely involved, you still know it better than we do. What a great and awesome God you are. And then we consider your power and your ability to do any and all things according to your wisdom. And we know that we've come to the right place. So Lord, I pray that you be with each person who has been lifted up here tonight, and even those that maybe we have kept in our minds, or maybe even somebody that we have forgotten just for the duration of our time in here. And we know that these folks need more than we can give. And a lot of people who maybe they are the subject of the prayer request themselves, and they realize that they've come to a point where they are helpless to do anything about what they're facing. And so we come to you, and we just we lean in on you. We find shelter with you. We look for comfort in you. We look for strength to make it through with you, because we know that you are able and you have a desire to meet our needs. So, God, we thank you for hearing us. We thank you for Jesus who paved the way for and split the veil so that we could come to you. And I pray that we would find comfort in even the fact that you love us enough to avail yourself to us. God, as we consider the services that we have coming up, and as we commemorate the greatest event that has ever happened in human history, and all the ramifications that are there, all the great things that come about because of it, Lord, I guess it's pretty much impossible for us to be able to worship you the way that you deserve. But Lord, we want to do the best that we can. We want to come as close as we can to expressing to you our gratitude and our awe and wonder at who you are and what you've done. And so you know the things that we have going on to commemorate that and what it can mean to different people. And so we just ask that you'd use those times as tools to reach the people. And then also I pray that you'd use us as we think about these cards. It seems to be something that is so simple, and it is so simple, and yet it can have such an impact. So give us a burden for the people who are around us, the people that we come in contact with, and give us a burden for them, and help us to see also our responsibility that you've given us according to Matthew 28 and Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And may we be about your business to see people be saved, even if it's just passing out a simple card, and then we'll leave the results to you. Thank you for our time together tonight, for the chance that we have to fellowship with one another and encourage one another. And now as we go about our way, use this time together to encourage us to live better for you the end of this week than we did the first part of this week. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all for being with us, and we look forward to seeing y'all Sunday, if not sooner.
Wait, one more
Oh.
announcement.
Got another announcement. And they can hear you, right? You got your mic?
Yeah, they can hear me.
Okay.
Sunday, and I'm saying this for the people online specifically, Sunday we will not be
Yes.
live streaming the cantata.
Yes.
So if you want to see it, we would love to see you in person. We just have some technical difficulties that we can't get around, so we can't stream it.
And possibly some copyright issues that we're not sure if we have addressed correctly. So